Hey everyone, welcome back to my channel. I'm Kate, this is The Mystic in the Woods, and we are finally doing part 3 in this video series on reading with multiple decks, and today we're going to talk about reading with 2 tarot decks at the same time. So I read with 2 decks in a few different ways. So first, you can use a second tarot deck to clarify a first tarot deck. So you can use the tarot deck as your one tarot deck as your primary deck, and a second tarot deck as your clarifying deck. I usually use Oracle for that. And we are going to do some demonstrations today on how I read in these different ways. I probably won't do one on that unless you guys want a specific video on it. But the 3 main ways that I read with 2 decks are, one, when I'm doing an intuitive spread, so I don't have set meanings, and I will lay out cards from both decks at the same time. I will also, if I'm reading a spread with set position meanings, I will use one deck for that, and then I will use kind of both tarot decks if I want to create an intuitive spread off of a specific card position. And I'll do an example of that. And then I have a sort of spread where I'll put like, there's the word for this, and I can't think of it, where I'll put one card in the middle and I may either draw that randomly or I may choose it intentionally, and then I'll put cards around it to expand on the meaning of that card in the middle. So we're going to go through some examples of how I do all of these things, and I'm going to try to use a couple different deck combinations for you as well. All right, so we're going to do a few sample readings using 2 tarot decks. The first one, we're going to use the Darkness of Light and the Boo Tarot. This is my go-to deck this fall. Freaking love it. This first one is going to be a 6-card completely intuitive spread, so no set position meanings. And I'll kind of explain how and why I read with this spread a lot as we go. So let's do a 6-card spread on, let's just say, daily life. Like, let's just say things in day-to-day life have been feeling really heavy, and we need some insight into that, especially, navigating it and staying in alignment as we work through our day-to-day life. So we're going to take 3 cards, 3 cards from the Boo Tarot. So we've got 3 cards from the Boo Tarot, and then we're going to do 3 cards from the Darkness of Light Tarot. And let me scoot that down. So 3 cards from the Darkness of Light Tarot on the same thing, okay? So we're doing 3 and 3. Make sure that they all end up in frame here. Okay, so we have the 5 of Cups, King of Wands, and Judgment from Darkness of Light, and we also have the 5 of Cups, the High Priestess, and the 4 of Wands from the Boo Tarot. So, of course, the first thing that we're going to notice right away is that the 5 of Cups has shown up twice. The 5 of Cups has shown up from both decks. So this is a very important energy at this time, right, is this 5 of Cups. Now, we also have the High Priestess right in the middle at the top of our spread. So that's something that feels important to me. And then, of course, we have the 2 majors, the High Priestess and Judgment. Now, we don't have any earth, right? We don't really have any air. So we've got lots of water and we've got some fire. But we don't really have any air, right? So these are just things to take note of whenever I'm doing a reading. Now, the first thing I want to touch on is the 2 5 of Cups. So right now we are definitely in a place where we feel like we've lost something. We are feeling heartbreak. Regardless of whether or not things could be worse, it's important to take a moment and honor that, to honor and sit with where we are emotionally. Maybe not where we should be or where we want to be, but we need to honor that. Okay, we do need to spend time honoring this 5 of Cups. However, we also have the High Priestess and Judgment showing up, and along with the Four of Wands, which makes me think perhaps we need to look at our life a little bit more objectively, and we need to take a step back, look at it more objectively, see what patterns there are, and then really intuitively also see where are we're definitely grieving, we're upset about something, and like I said, we want to honor that. We don't want to rush through that feeling. We don't want to bypass it. However, with the Judgment card and the Four of Wands showing up, and I'm sorry that I'll try to keep my hands off the table so it stops shaking. With Judgment and the Four of Wands also showing up in this spread, that makes me think, okay, it's actually time to maybe take a step back and look at this objectively and see where, while, yes, we are grieving, what do we have to be happy for? Okay, with the Four of Wands coming up and the Judgment card coming up as well. Now, one of the things that I like about this spread is it allows me to read in a few different ways. I can read bottom to top, I can read directionally, I can look at what each deck is telling me. There's a lot of ways in which my intuition can work off of this spread. Now, of course, everything that I'm saying and everything that I'm going to say as we continue through this video, you could do with just one deck, okay? You can based on your intuition and with the other cards that are coming up, you could absolutely get the same messages. This just works really well for me. So, we're going to go through this a little bit more, and then I'm going to swap out the cards so that you can see maybe how this would change if we had the same cards from the opposite decks come up. Okay, anyway, so it's also definitely time, though, to use our intuition, okay, to really honor and look at where we can bring our intuition into day-to-day life to help us move through this Five of Cups energy and into the energy where we're actually celebrating the things that we do have. Now, with the King of Wands showing up right here and looking straight out of the deck at me, so he's one who's looking straight out, right? I also start to wonder, maybe this situation is more controllable than we think, okay? So that's just like a really quick interpretation of this spread. So in day-to-day life right now, yes, things are feeling very hard. We feel like we're losing something, like we've lost something, and we do want to honor that, absolutely. However, with Judgment and the Four of Wands, we also really want to look at the things we can celebrate, look at the things we do have to really take a more objective look, and then use our intuition in day-to-day life to help us navigate, because we really do have more control here than we think, but perhaps we're going to combine the King of Wands energy with the High Priestess energy to begin navigating day-to-day life in a way that feels more in alignment with ourselves. It also feels really important to me for some reason in this particular spread that this candle is not lit and this candle is. And that's right on top of the King of Wands, who is, of course, he's very fiery. So these are just kind of things to take note of, right? So I'm going to swap out some of the cards, and then we'll look at this again. All right, so I've swapped out the cards and sort of mirrored the spread. So this is the other way that these two decks could have given us the exact same cards, right? But they're coming from opposite decks. So we still have the two fives. We still have the King of Wands, High Priestess, Four of Wands, and Judgment. All right, so a lot of the message is still going to stay the same. We still have the same cards. So we still have the Five of Cups, where we want to be honoring that heartbreak or that sense of loss, and perhaps eventually moving through it with Judgment and the Four of Wands coming up. We have the King of Wands. Instead of really looking at us, he really is looking at the Five of Cups. He's really directing his energy that way. We have the High Priestess here, who feels like she's kind of holding everything up, right? And now we have the Four of Wands that doesn't have figures on it. It's just it's a different and an interesting take on the Four of Wands, where we just have the Four of Wands in the window. So while we do still have the same message coming from the cups, now I feel like our intuition is really what is going to help us control day-to-day life, because we still want to take an honest look at everything, right? But now instead of Four of Wands, where we have two people, so perhaps in the last reading we could have even brought in that aspect where what can we celebrate about our relationships in life? Now we have the Four of Wands in a window, in a home, which is making me think, what can we be really as we move out of this Five of Cups energy, which, like I said, we want to honor and then move out of, given that we have the Four of Wands and we have Judgment showing up, we want to really use our intuition here to maybe build or to see success at home. So how can we really use our feminine intuitive sort of energy to create small successes within the home? And while that may typically be a Four of or a Pentacles sort of feeling, when we read spreads, there's always multiple directions that we can go with it. There's always multiple meanings, right? So with the King of Wands looking at the Five of Cups, I also, feel like while the intuition is what's going to help us navigate our day-to-day life, perhaps this King of Wands energy is what's really going to help us to move through the Five of Cups. So we could read the King of Wands here as an individual. So perhaps there is a King of Wands individual in our life who can help us get through this Five of Cups moment. Or perhaps this is an energy. And these are things that we would go off of intuitively in a reading, right? So this is just like a sample reading, so I'm giving you a few different options. So perhaps we're going to step into this King of Wands energy and we're going to say, okay, in order to get out of this Five of Cups, maybe there's something we need to be sharing and bringing out into the world. Maybe there's something, maybe we need to reignite some of that spiritual passion or whatever and bring that out into the world. Now the other thing is, like, what if it looks like this? Okay, how does this change the message if the cards come up in this direction? What if the cards come up like this, in this direction? Okay, this could change the feeling of the spread as well. Perhaps now, there's something in day-to-day life we're really trying to build off of a shaky foundation, where we're trying to build our day-to-day life based on a feeling of grief that may or may not be true, with Judgment here shown, not true as in you don't feel it, but perhaps may or may not be as big a deal, objectively speaking, as it may feel. Whereas, what if we have the King of Cups or the King of Wands down here? So you see how as we start to move the cards around and the same cards come up from different decks, it can change the message. And we still, having the repeater cards really tells us that this is the energy to focus on. This is a big deal in day-to-day life right now. This feeling of loss in day-to-day life. So that's just a real quick sample of how we could read these 6 cards. Now, without set spread positions, there are lots of ways that, based on intuition, we may take this spread. Okay, so let's do a couple more examples with different types of spreads. All right, so for this, let's do a 4-card set position spread. We'll use the spread out of the Hush Tarot, which is like my favorite 4-card spread of all time, to date at least. We're going to use the Hush Tarot and the Pagan Otherworld. So you could, of course, in any of these readings, like I said, you could use any deck combination that you like. You can, based on, your intuitive hits are going to change how you read the spread. There's always multiple ways based on card meanings alone that a spread could be taken. And a good reader, of course, knows the same cards could come up the same cards could come up for 2 different people, and we're still going to get different messages. And these are, again, short sample readings. So if we were reading for an individual, if I was actually reading for an individual, we would go into these deeper, right? So let's do a 4-card spread now. Let's do one on work and business, like career-wise. So we're going to do the 4-card spread from the Hush Tarot. So what energy wants to flow? What is blocking that energy? What are the internal influences here? And what are the external influences here? Okay, so this is our main spread. And then we're going to take the Pagan Otherworlds as our second deck to build off of a spread position here. So let's just look at this real quick. So the energy that wants to flow freely is the Queen of Cups. So perhaps at work, in our career, we really want to be taking a very intuitive approach. We really want to be following our intuition at work to be creating projects and to be building success, right? But perhaps we don't really believe that we can do that with the star showing up, perhaps we don't actually believe that we're capable of doing this. And so instead, we're really trying to micromanage and control every aspect of work, with the Magician showing up as the internal influences. And as external influences, we have the Five of Pentacles. So perhaps there really is a shortage of resources here as well. So while we want to be following our intuition, we don't believe we can, because there's really a lack of resources on this particular project. And so we're trying to really force a result that perhaps our intuition would take us a different direction in, but we're not trusting it at this time. So we'll take the Pagan Otherworlds, and let's do like 3 cards. So let's say we want more information on this resources thing, okay? So the external resources. So how do we create the success we're looking for and the energies we're looking for here, with the resources that we have? So let's do that. Okay, so we've got the Eight of Swords, the Magician again, and the Ace of Pentacles. So the first thing, right, is that this lack of resources is a very real thing at this moment in our career. Whether that resource be finances, or it be team members, or it be there's a physical resource that is lacking. However, the Magician has shown up again to tell us we have the tools to do this. So while we may be trying to force something, if we do allow for the Queen's energy to come forward, we do have the tools to do this. What we have to do is stop overthinking it and perhaps bring in a new idea. So perhaps there is a new resource, a different resource at work that we aren't taking full advantage of. So with that Ace of Pentacles, the Magician, and the Eight of Swords, that really makes me think that, yes, there is a lack of resources, of the traditional resources in this particular project at work. However, if we maybe, step outside of what we think of as traditional resources, there is something that we can absolutely utilize to create success in this situation and allow for us to be more intuitive. And in fact, maybe that intuitive energy is what is going to help us find this resource that is maybe not a traditional resource for whatever project it is that we're working on at this time. And we want to really trust that with the star showing up, that we are capable of using our intuition in this way. Now, the Queen of Cups is also, for me, about authenticity. So there really is an authentic intuitive power that we can bring to this project. But we have to balance out this Magician energy, because we have it showing up in an intuitive position over here, and we also have it showing up in an internal influences on this energy in the middle. So we need to perhaps stop forcing and begin co-creating with, whether that be our team, or whether that be the universe, or our spirit tribe, or whatever it is that you're going to be co-creating on this project. It's time to let go of some control and really co-create with that as above, so below energy. But we're going to want to bring in this unconventional resource. So we're going to do one more, and we're going to do a spiritual path reading, just because those are kind of the big 3. Well, the relationship would have been the 4th, right? Work, day-to-day life, relationship, spiritual path. We're going to do a spiritual path reading because that's what I use this combination of decks for the most. You could do this with other decks, other combinations, other topics, etc. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to take one card from my Divine Feminine Oracle, and I'm going to place it right in the middle, and we're going to bring the reading, we're going to consistently bring the reading back to that. The Divine Mother, unconditional love exists within me. The presence of love is the absence of judgment. So we're going to use this as sort of the focal point of our reading. I'm going to take 2 from the True Black Tarot, and for me, this kind of brings in like a Divine Masculine sort of energy, and a more active sort of energy into the reading. And then we're going to take 2 from the Divine Feminine as well. So these are just, what do I need to know on my spiritual path, right? So the first thing, right? So two of coins, daughter or page of cups, 9 of cups, 4 of swords. So this says the presence of love is the absence of judgment, right? So perhaps we've really been judging our spiritual path a little bit harshly lately. Maybe we're feeling like we're not doing enough, and we've been trying to do too many things on our spiritual path in an attempt to feel connection, in an attempt to feel love, in an attempt to ease the judgment that we're feeling about our spiritual path, this self-judgment. And right now really is a time to be more discerning about where we put our energy, take some time to rest, to meditate, to simplify, and to really tap into this creativity so that we can kind of step into that 9 of cups energy where we're feeling the divine love and we're feeling the wishes being granted and things like that. But in order to do any of that with the 9 of cups, right, unconditional love exists within me. We could tie that very easily to the 9 of cups, but in order to do that, the presence of love is the absence of judgment. We need to be kinder to ourselves on our spiritual path at this time. And we really need to ease up. We don't need to do everything in order to have a meaningful, powerful practice. So again, we need to be more discerning on where we're putting our energy, because trying to do everything isn't helping. But maybe tapping into our creativity, taking some time for rest and meditation is going to help us really unlock that love within us so that we stop judging quite so much and can get into that connection that we're looking for. So this is a very quick spiritual path sort of reading that I might do with these particular decks. So as I've said before, right, if this was a reading for an individual, we would get into it more. If this was a reading for myself, this is where I would turn to journaling and meditation. But I wanted to try and keep this video relatively short because I think we're already at like 25 minutes or something. So that's kind of how I read with 2 different tarot decks at once. Those are kind of my 3 primary reading methods. If I'm going to grab 2 tarot decks at once. And like I said, I really enjoy using 2 tarot decks, Really like using 2 tarot decks because repeater cards come up really often. The juxtaposition in the artwork can really help speak to my intuition and really help pull out the underlying story. And it just works for me. As I lay cards down from multiple decks, I will almost have the story click together as if I'm clicking a puzzle piece together. So it just really works for me. And it may not work for you, and that's totally okay, but I enjoy reading with 2 tarot decks. Plus, there's kind of like the side benefit of if I'm reading with multiple decks at once, then I get to use more of the decks in my collection at once, and I enjoy that because I like to work with all my decks. Yeah, so that's how I read with 2 different tarot decks at once. I hope you enjoyed this video, and I will see you in the next one. Have a great day.